Okay, this is the image I first saw that gave me the inspiration for my bookcase. First thing you do is make your plans. I had to kind of estimate sizes, but I think I matched it pretty good. You draw out your plans. I use TurboCAD. Get your dimensions, how much wood you need. And once you get your plans and get your wood, you're ready to start. First thing you always want to do is make sure your tools are aligned. In this case, this is my planer joiner. I'll make sure it's square so when I join the edges, they'll be nice and square and smooth. And it's good to keep your tools cleaned and aligned. First thing I'm going to do is plane the edges of the type, what would be the top of the bookcase. You want to get them nice and square and smooth. This is a pretty big board, so it's a little awkward. Always use safety. Keep your hands away from blades. Make sure you can handle the wood that you're using. And this is the smaller piece of wood that will actually be joining to the side of that board you just saw to make the right size tabletop. The boards I get weren't quite big enough, so I had to make it just a little bit bigger. Now I line the two boards together just to make my top. You're going to use what's called biscuits to join them together, but first I lay it out and get positioning. I want to measure to make sure that where I place my biscuits, they aren't going to be too close to the edge, so that when I cut to the right length, I don't want to expose the biscuits. And then make marks where I will actually drill the slots for the biscuits. Biscuits are compressed pieces of wood that have been cut into an oval shape. You drill a slot in the side of the board and you insert the biscuits with glue, and that causes the biscuits to give you a nice firm joint. This is the size 20, which is the largest of the biscuits. Then you have your biscuit cutter, which you go to where your pencil marks, line it up, and you push it in and it drills a slot. Do that for each of your pencil marks on each board. And I'll do the smaller board. You want to make sure you cut them from the same side as well, so that your biscuits are centered vertically, or at least relative to each other. In woodworking, it's hard to get things perfect. The real art in woodworking is knowing how to fix things that aren't quite right to make them look right. And laying out my clamps that I'll glue the two boards together with. Put the bigger board down with the right side up. It's a little awkward. Now I'll put glue on each edge of each board. You notice you can see the slots now where the biscuits are going to go. And I already put glue on the bigger one. I just didn't see a reason to show how to do glue again. And now I'll glue the biscuits. You put glue on the edge of the biscuit and slip it into the slot. The biscuits absorb the moisture from the glue and will actually expand a little bit, giving you a tighter joint, as well as helping to align the joint. After you get them in the slots, you put glue on the other side. Well, you use plenty of glue. I've never had a glue joint break. Usually the wood around it will break. And you put the boards together, lining up the slots. And tighten the clamps. And you'll squeeze out some glue, that's normal. You don't want them extremely tight, but you want them pretty firm. And you come back with a wet rag and wipe off as much glue as you can while it's still wet. You don't want to wait for it to dry, and you try to avoid having as much glue dried on there as you can, because that will affect the finish. And I like to put more clamps in across the top of it, just to kind of even out the pressure. The board should be pretty flat, but this kind of helps to pull both ends. And remember, glue squeezes out the bottom as well, so you'll wipe off as much as you can. Of course, you can't really get where the clamps are. Now I'm going to cut the boards for the rails and the stiles. This is what forms the frame of the front of the bookcase. Even though my table saw has measurements on it, you always want to double check. The old saying, measure twice, cut once. Especially with dealing with oak, because oak is very expensive. In this case, I'm using what's called laminated oak. It's actually lots of little pieces of oak boards glued edge to make one big oak board. It's a little cheaper, actually quite a bit cheaper. And it gives you a nice board because it's good and dried and squared normally. When you're sawing, you're going to keep your hands away from the blade. I've got a push block on there that I'll use once I start getting closer to the blade. Here I am now with the push block. I'll cut 4 of these. Now I'm using my panel cutter. This is allowing me to cut the sides of the bookcase to where they're all the same exact size. I'm cutting 2 at a time. And since it's oak, you want to go pretty slow. But I have them clamped to the panel cutter, and I'm just slowly pushing it through with a nice squared edge. Now I'm going to drill what's called pocket holes, and this is how I'm going to attach the shelves to the sides of the desk. There's lots of different ways you can join. This is one of the newer, more popular ways. A little bit easier than some of them because you don't have to be lined perfectly when you do it, and it's just as strong. Basically it involves using a pocket hole jig, and you drill a hole through the board at an angle where it comes out the end of the board. Then you have special made pocket hole screws that will screw through that pocket hole and pull the boards together extremely tight. And in some cases you'll want to use glue, which will add to the strength of the board. I drill 3 of these on each shelf side, each end of each shelf. Always let the drill bit do the work. Don't force it. So now you can see the pocket holes. And now I'm going to attach the sides to the shelf, or actually attach the shelves to the sides. I'm using clamps to make some little rails to mount the shelves temporarily. The bookcase is upside down. These are the bottom of the shelf, so you won't see these holes normally. The only time you see them is if you look underneath the shelf. But you want to make sure that it's level to the boards, not necessarily level to the floor, because my floor is unlevel here. Lay the shelf, align it. I'm checking level, but I'm checking level relative to the boards themselves. A little tricky, but you can do it visually. And I clamp together so make sure the boards are tight when I start screwing them together with the pocket hole screws. One of the biggest tricks in woodworking is keep things tight, squared, and right angled. And you drill the screws in, and the screws will pull the two boards together. Now I have the bookcase back right side up. I'm attaching some cross beams. These will be used to hold the top to the bookcase. Now I'm using a chop saw to cut the rails and stiles to the correct lengths. Do two at a time, that way your measurements are more accurate relative to each other. And then I'm going to round the edges of them with my router. Here again, use all safety, keep your hands away from moving blades. And now we jumped ahead to where you see more of the finished piece. Mainly because I hurt my hand in part of this operation. I had to stop working on it for a while, so I didn't shoot much video. But you can see the rail and the stiles, how they're joined. I got a little dimension to them by making the rail a little bit thinner than the stiles. And this is the bookcase, doesn't have the back on it yet. Got a little support on the back to hold the 1/4 inch plywood to the back of it in the middle. You can see the plywood will just slide in the little grooves on each side. And sanding. This is one of the most boring parts of working on wood, but it's also the most important. You want a nice smooth top to get your finish on. The smoother the top, smoother the wood, the smoother the finish. Polyurethane makes a good finish, but it doesn't make it much smoother unless your top is already smoother. Apply a little stain. In this case, I'm using oak stain on oak wood. Just makes it darker, richer looking. Brings out the grain. You put a nice even coat all around, then you go back and wipe it off before it dries. And if you need it a little bit darker, you put on another coat. I believe in this case, I just kept one coat because it was plenty dark enough. I hope you enjoyed this video. Show you a little bit about what goes into making a bookcase. Here's the finished product. I don't have any books in it yet because I just haven't had time to do it. Thanks for watching.